I had a project that needed to get done. It was a concrete project. I had a berm along our driveway that was about a foot wide and about 40 feet long, and I think it went down to the center of the earth. That's how far it stretched. And if you know anything about, it's been there since the house was built. So it's, 50 or 60 years old. And if you know anything about concrete, and I don't know anything about concrete, apparently the older the concrete is, the harder it is. So I had this project, and I had to get rid of this concrete. Well, no, Penny told me I had to get rid of this concrete. Okay, so let's just really be honest. She wanted me to get rid of it. So I thought about it and walked around and looked at it and considered it. I even took a sledgehammer and hit it once, and I realized that's not going anywhere. And so I went back in and I thought about it some more, and I processed it and even looked at some YouTube videos on how I could rent a jackhammer and do it myself. And then I thought about it some more, and it crumbled. And Penny asked me again, when were you going to get rid of that? This is the exact same way we operate when it comes to our financial lives. We know we have a thing. We know we have an issue. We know we have a problem that we need to deal with. And what we end up doing is thinking about it and processing it. Now, I want to tell you before I go on that the concrete is gone. And I did indeed rent a jackhammer. And I did indeed nearly killed myself by renting a jackhammer. And so I hired other guys to come do it, and they couldn't get it done. So I finally hired a guy with one of those big jackhammers, and it's gone and piled up along the side of the road or the side of our driveway. Now I've got to figure out how am I going to get rid of the concrete that is piled up. Anyway, the bottom line is there is some point in your life where you just have to stop thinking about it and you have to do the right thing. Nothing is going to change unless you start exerting some wisdom. Because Immanuel Kant, German philosopher, said, science is organized knowledge, wisdom is organized life. Sometimes you just need to organize your life. You need to exert some wisdom, because wisdom is good sense. Wisdom is good judgment. Wisdom is prudence. And when it comes to our financial lives, sometimes you just need to exert some prudence. Wisdom is the fourth and final internal belief or posture that I think shapes healthy financial lives, that leads us to the good life. So we're in the middle of this, we're at the end of this series, and what we tried to give you this illustration of an iceberg. Now an iceberg, this is our life, is like an iceberg. An iceberg is a chunk of ice, usually huge, that's floating in the water. Now the way it happens is that the water, when you look at an iceberg, there's only a small amount of it's above the water line. So what's above the water line in your life financially are your practices. It's how you spend. It's your checkbook. It's how you save. It's what you do with debt. It's how much you give. Those are the practices of your financial life. And you can see those things, but that's really not the bulk of your financial life. What's below the waterline, the huge part of your life, are the beliefs, are the postures, are the attitudes that actually shape the practices that are above the waterline. So we have been looking at those 4 of those core beliefs below the waterline. Week 1, Tim helped us understand the necessity of considering our responsibility with what God has given us. We call it stewardship. So that's the first posture below the waterline. How do you feel about, for example, do you believe God owns it all? I mean, that's the primal belief. If you're going to live the good life financially, do you believe that God owns it all and that you're a steward of what He's given you to use? The second week, we looked at the second core attitude or philosophy below the waterline of your financial life, and that is contentment. Is enough enough? Now, we're going to come back to this in a few moments. I'm going to revisit this topic, but can you say that you're content? That shapes what you do, the practices. Last week, we took a look at the core attitude of faith when it comes to your financial life. And we looked at two kinds of faith, resting faith and testing faith. Resting faith is the assurance that God sees you and knows your needs. You rest in that. I rest in the fact that God sees me and he knows my needs. Resting faith is confidence that God cares for you and that you are dear to him. You can rest in the confidence that you are dear to him. And finally, resting faith is the conviction that God will provide for you. Do you rest in the fact that God will provide for you? But resting faith is not enough, because God says we need to test that. So we took a look at testing faith. Testing faith is where we put our confidence in God to the test. He told us to do this. Test me in this, he said. Testing faith is the assurance in God that is verified through action. Testing faith is acting on the promises of God. Resting faith, testing faith, both are essential. We cannot live the good life in our financial health until we are resting our faith in God and then testing that. We will not live the good life unless we are practicing contentment. We will not live the good life unless we are committed to stewardship. And today I want to wrap this up and suggest to you that we're not going to live the good life without exerting some wisdom. Wisdom. And like always, we're going to take a look in the scriptures, and there is one book in the Bible that probably has more wisdom packed into it than any of the books of the Bible. You know, does anybody know what that is? That is the book of Proverbs. So you want to grab a Bible and turn to page 525. Thank you for joining us online this morning. You might see if you can find a Bible in your house and turn to the book of Proverbs. But now I have a caveat here. You know that when we do sermons here, when we preach, I feel strongly about this, and Barry feels strongly, and so do Tim and Amy when we preach, that we love, one of our favorite things is when we're preaching, you're looking down at the Bible. Like you're listening, but you're looking down at the Bible. For one reason is that now you know that we're not making this stuff up, okay? Because it's right there. And the other thing is, look, there are words going to come out of my mouth that really the words that come from the mouth of God are far more powerful than any word I'm going to say. So I want the scriptures in front of you. However, because we're going to look at so many Proverbs, these little pithy statements, you are going to have a hard time flipping from one chapter to the other. So if you are fast of finger and you can flip through the Bible, great. Keep it open on your lap, but I'm going to give you a break and I'm going to put the scripture on the screen too. So that in case you miss one, it'll be right in front of you. So the book of Proverbs is, in essence, one little statement after another, after another, after another, and it goes on and on and on. Primarily written by the king of Israel at the time, King Solomon. Now, he didn't write all of them. He wrote most of them, or a lot of them, I should say, and there are others who contributed. But back in that day, when a king was preparing his successor to take over, he would give them a list of wise things to consider. In this case, Solomon wrote a lot of his Proverbs for his son, who he assumed would become his successor. And so we have this collection that ends up being very wise for us as well. For example, you look at chapter 3, verse 1. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 1. My child, he says, never forget the things I've taught you. Store my commands in your heart, and if you do this, you will live many years, and your life will be satisfying. Look what he says. Then you will live the good life. If you follow my wisdom, you'll live the good life. Flip over to chapter 4. Verse 6. Don't turn your back on wisdom, for she will protect you. Love her, and she will guard you. Getting wisdom is the wisest thing you can do. And whatever else you do, develop good judgment. If you prize wisdom, look at this phrase, if you prize wisdom, she will make you great. Embrace her, and she will honor you. Wisdom will make you great. Look, I'm just making a point for wisdom here, right? Making a case. Look at chapter 9, verse 11. Keep flipping. Chapter 9, verse 11. You want the fountain of youth? Here it is. Wisdom will multiply your days and add years to your life. If you become wise, you will be the one to benefit. If you scorn wisdom, you will be the one to suffer. So there it is. You want to live a long time? Practice wisdom. So you get the point. I don't care what topic it is. This one we're talking about is the financial life. I don't care what topic it is. Wisdom is what we need to start exerting. It will lead us to the good life. Now, I'm about to do something that I don't do very often. This whole sermon is going to be a list. I don't usually preach lists. But if you like lists, you're going to be in hog heaven, because they're going to be lists within lists, and they're going to be lists within lists within lists. So if you are a bullet point person, boy, you're going to love this. And the beauty, when I tell you that when we go through this list, and matter of fact, here's the sermon, is the 7 wisest things you should do with your financial life. That's the sermon. The 7 wisest things. Here's another side benefit of a list, is that you'll be able to tell how close I'm getting to the end. Because when I'm like 3, you're going, okay, he still has more to go. When you start to get to 4 or 5 or 6, you're going, oh yeah. So you'll be able to tell. All right, so here we go. The 7 wisest things you could do with your financial life. Number 1, swallow your pride. I heard an ooh. Swallow your pride. Now, I'm going to give you a list within the list of things that you may have said or thought. See if this is true. How about this? Have you ever thought or said this? My financial health is nobody's business. That's pride. How about this? Well, nobody knows my finances better than I do. Pride. How about nobody's going to tell me what to do? Oh, prideful one. How about this? Well, it's my hard-earned money. I'll do with it what I want to do with it. Oh, have you ever said this? You're like, I'm smart enough to figure this out on my own. Or how about this? Look, I know we're struggling financially. It'll get better. We just need to catch a break. Or this one, I get this one. I'd be embarrassed if anyone saw our finances. These are prideful comments. It's time to swallow your pride, because Proverbs 11:2 says this: pride leads to disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. Socrates said the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. Right? I know nothing. Swallow your pride. You're not going to reach any kind of financial health until you can start there. Here's what I want you to imagine. We've all seen a toddler when they're holding on to that toy that they think is the most important thing in the world. Picture that toddler gripping that and just not wanting to let it go. That's what we do with our finances. We're like toddlers, gripping, unwilling to let it go, to experience what we could experience in our lives. Number 1, swallow your pride. Number 2, second wisest thing you could do is with your finances is to seek God. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. Don't be impressed with your own wisdom. Instead, fear the Lord and turn away from evil. So I'm going to get real specific here and real granular. I'm going to give you a list within a list again. How is it that we go about seeking God about our finances? And actually, you could say it this way: how do you pray? How should we pray? What Solomon says is trust in God with all your heart, seek his will, and he will show us the path we need to take. So when it comes to my financial life, I want to see the path. You want to see the path. I want it clearly before me. So how do we do that? So I'm going to walk you through a real basic, here's how you pray. The first thing you need to do is verbalize to God what exactly it is that you need. Now you say, oh, seriously? That's what you're going to start with? Yes, because that's not what you do. What you do is you worry about it. You don't pray. You think about it. You get worked up about it. You fuss about it, but you don't turn that into prayer. I know you. I know me. And for some reason I'm thinking, well, I'm praying about it. No, you're not. You're worrying about it. It's time to verbalize it to God. Now, how do you verbalize a need to God? Well, you can say it out loud. God is all around us. He will hear our prayer. Or if you don't want to say it out loud, say it to yourself, but God hears it. Or you can do what I do to take away all the indecision. I write it down. I have a little journal and I write down, here's what I need. I was doing it this morning. Here's what I need from you. So what that does is now between me and God, we have an understanding, this is what I need. And now I've told you, here's the show me my path. Now, at this point, sometimes God is gracious to us. And if we take a few moments after we verbalize to God our need, sometimes he supernaturally tells us, we get some sort of impression, we get some sort of idea, we get that. But I'm going to be honest with you, that doesn't happen very often for me. So what I need to do is I verbalize. Sometimes it does, thank God. Sometimes it's but I verbalize my need. But then I go about trying to, as best I can, read the scriptures, maybe read other material or listen to some friends and try to gain some input. Now, I've already verbalized to God what I need. I'm looking for the path, but here's what God does. As I'm getting this input in my life, if I start paying attention, he starts answering through that input. Either through the scriptures, oh, I never saw that in the Bible before, or a conversation I have with somebody, oh yeah. The key, though, is we have to, side note, probably the simplest, shortest sermon I've preached for years and years and years is 2 words, and that's pay attention. Right? Pay attention. So if you verbalize to God what you need, and you're seeking that input through all the means you can, if you then pay attention, do you think he's not going to answer you? You pay attention, he will answer you, and he will direct your path. So when it comes to finances, this is the process we need to go through to seek God. That's the second wisest thing you could do. The third wisest thing you could do is to moderate your appetite. Moderate your appetite. Proverbs 15:27 says, a greedy man brings trouble to his family. Proverbs 23:4 says, do not wear yourselves out to get rich. Have the wisdom to show, say this last word with me, restraint. Say it with me again. Say it one more time. Restraint. That is a practically un-American word. Restraint. Moderate your appetite. This is a very wise thing to do. You're going to have to start predetermining the answer to this question. Watch. How much is enough? How much is enough? Now, keeping up with the theme of lists within lists, here's another list for you. I'm going to give you a series of questions to help you decide whether enough is enough. Starting with the one my dad hammered into my brain. Is it a need or is it a want? My father, Diego Rodriguez, frequently would ask me when I wanted to buy something, Dave, is it a need or is it a want? Okay, I got it. But really, it's a good question. Maybe we should start right there. How about this question? Here's the second question. Can I do without it? Now, that's not to say that I don't think saying all buying should be limited just to needs, but this question, can I do without it, really will shape our purchasing. Here's another question we could ask ourselves to moderate our appetite. Is this a status purchase? Am I buying this to make a statement? Now, I know what your brain goes right to. Are you saying that I'm buying something to impress my neighbor? Well, maybe. But that's not really who you're trying to impress. You're trying to make a statement to yourself, right? With some of the things you buy, that you're okay. Is this a status? Is this somehow to cement myself in my brain that I'm okay in this world? Here's another question. It gets real practical. Does it need to be this big? Does it need to be this big? Do we really need that many square feet on our home? Or let's get real practical. Do we each need our own entree at the restaurant? This is a problem in the Rodriguez family. Because when we go to a restaurant, invariably, Penny will say to me, "Do you want to split an entree?" And what is the proper answer? No, we're not going to split an entree. Actually, that's not the proper answer. Who's with me, though? You don't split entrees. Thank you. I've just caused all kinds of family problems. You're going to deal with this. But then what happens? Because you've put the line in the sand, and you said, "No, I'm getting mine. You get whatever you want, but I'm getting this." And when it comes, because it's an American meal, it's too much food. And then guess what? I'm going to eat that even if I don't want to finish it, because I'll be embarrassed if I didn't, right? Okay? That's the way I am. I'm sorry if I've caused family problems, but this is a question. Does it need to be this big is a question we need to ask ourselves. Here's another question. Do I need this much of it? Do we need this many vacations? Do we need 3 cars? Do we need 25 pairs of shoes? Last hour, somebody yelled out, yes. Right? I mean, and I was like, well, thank you for your honesty. You clearly did not swallow your pride on that. Yesterday, I went to that place in America where you have to battle this question the moment you walk in the door. Costco. And as I stood there with the many containers of honey in my arm, because the price was right, everybody, thinking, I'll be eating honey until Jesus returns, I had to ask myself again, do I really need this much of it? Here's another question. We're talking about moderating our appetite. Can I borrow it instead of buying it? Yeah, right? Because do I really need to get that specific saw? Do I really need to have that implement? Can I borrow it? And how about this? Can I fix it or make it myself? Now, God has given us, I think God himself created YouTube just for this reason. Okay? No, God didn't create YouTube. But my point is, I love the fact that I took my dryer apart on my own and put it back together. Now, it looked like this. I was watching the YouTube as I was doing it, and I put it back together, and I could say, I fixed my dryer. I fixed my dryer myself. Okay? I did that. And I tried to do that with the concrete, but that, I'm going to tell you, have you ever used a jackhammer? I'm going to tell you, that beat the daylights out of me. And after about 10 minutes, I was like, no, I laid that thing down. And that's when I said, I need help. Can I fix it or make it myself? Now, I'm going to give you a list within a list within a list, because I'm going to share with you what I believe are the 5 most complicated spending issues of your life. These are the big 5. And the question of moderating our appetite gets really high level when you consider these 5 purchases. And you know what they are. Number 1, a home or a house. What size do you really need? Number 2, vacations. To where? How long? How many? 3, automobiles. Do you buy new or do you buy used? How long will you drive it? 4, college education. The average student debt in America is now $40,000. And 5, this may be the ouchiest of all, weddings. Average wedding ceremony or reception in Indianapolis is $21,000 to $35,000. That's average. Ready to move on? Let's just get less personal. Let's move on. All right, here we go. Fourth wisest thing you could do with your finances is share. Share. Proverbs 11:25 says, "A generous man will prosper. He who refreshes others will himself be refreshed." And of course, Proverbs 3:9 and 10 says, "Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine." We got to stay with this last phrase for just a second, and it's really, I think it has been abused in some Christian places. There are some people who have made it almost a quid pro quo with God. Okay, if I give you my tithe, I fully expect that you are now going to bless me and you're going to blow open the doors and I'm going to have more than I ever needed before. And I have a problem with that, but at the same time, I cannot dismiss what God says. He says this, "If you give me your first fruits, your tithe, if you give me off the top, then I will provide for you." It is abundantly clear. And my friends, one of the wisest things you could do is to share, because if you rest in God, you know He will provide for you. Now, it sounds counterintuitive. Wait a minute, I've got money and you're telling me to give some of this away? That means I have less money. Yeah, but you have more God at that point. When you share, then what He does, He says, "I will provide for you." This is a wise thing to do, to share. Number 5, you can see we're getting down near the end here, and I'm going to go quicker on some of these. Number 5, don't take on debt. We go back to the week 2. Proverbs 22:7 said, "The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender." I don't want to spend any more time on that because Amy unpacked that pretty deeply in week 2, but don't take on debt if you can avoid it. 6, save. Save. Proverbs 21:20 says, "The wise have wealth and luxury, but fools spend whatever they get." Wise people save money. Fools spend all they get. Now, here's a list within the list. How do you save money? And I apologize for being really basic here, but I need this as much as you do. Here's how you save money. Number 1, first thing you have to do is know how much you're bringing in. You go, "Oh, seriously? Really? Do you know how many people don't know how much they're bringing in? They just don't know. They're really not paying much attention to that. And you can't save if you don't know how much you're bringing in. Secondly, after you know how much you're bringing in, even as important, if not more important, is know how much you're spending. So know how much you're bringing in. Know how much you're spending. That's the second thing. And you know how many people don't know how much they're spending? A lot of people. And I'm going to be honest with you. When I was younger, this was true of me. I mean, I grew up in a household that my dad taught me the value of all these things. But I remember when I first got out on my own, I had a rude awakening the first couple of months when I realized I wasn't paying much attention to what was coming in. I certainly wasn't paying attention to what I was spending. And I realized, where is it going? Which leads to the third point. If you know how much you're bringing in and you know how much you're spending, well, then probably you are starting to work with a budget. And a budget is just a bunch of buckets. You take the money that's come in and you assign it to this bucket and some of it to this bucket and some of it to this bucket. And if you're wise on how you do that, then you have money left over and you can put it in the savings bucket. Now, in your savings bucket, there are like 2 slots. Slot number 1 is for your emergency fund. If you can save money for emergency fund, this will save so much pain. The average American is not able to take a hit of $1,000 because they've been struggling with trying to save. I mean, if you own a washer and dryer, let's be really honest. If you own a washer and dryer, I've got a dryer that's on its last legs. I've got to be honest with you. It is about to go. I'm thanking God that I think it was there before the concrete was at our house. There was that dryer was like, there's like 4 gerbils running around making that thing happen. But it's going to be gone someday. And the question is, will I be able to replace it when it's gone? A wise person told me I need to save for that. I can say thankfully before you hear that, because somebody advised me, I have money in an emergency fund where I could replace that dryer. It's important for us to be able to do that. That's the first. And once you take care of the emergency fund, then you can move on to saving for the bigger things, like I talked about last week, the retirement and education and other things. It is a wise thing to do to save. Now, what this leads to is the seventh, the final wisest thing. And after that last few words I was saying about savings, now some of you are really frustrated because you don't know how to do that because of where you are financially. So the seventh and final wisest thing I'm going to suggest to you is that you need to seek counsel. You need to seek counsel. Proverbs 12:15 says, "Fools think their own way is right, but the wise listen to others." Do you remember what the first wise thing I suggested was what? The very first one. Look at your list. What did I say? Swallow your pride. What's the final thing I'm saying? This comes around to seek counsel. You're not going to seek counsel until you're ready to swallow your pride. Because if you have to be ready with somebody who you trust to lay your finances before them and sit there and cringe as you talk about where you are. You must seek counsel, but you must first swallow your pride. Proverbs 11, did I do the 12? Yeah, Proverbs 11:14, there is safety in having many advisors. The idea of doing this series, I think this was my idea to do this series because of so many people that I've talked to who are struggling with this topic. Actually, Shane Wybree and I were talking about doing this series together. But we didn't want to just do theory, and I didn't want to just give you some scripture and say, okay, be warm, be filled, go figure this out. We wanted to provide for you very practical counsel. And that's why we have offered and will continue to offer our peer financial coaches. Now, peer meaning one of you. We are offering to you the opportunity to sit down with someone at Grace. Some of them are professional financial coaches, and some of them are just friends who God has blessed with the ability. They've made wise choices, and they want to help you figure it out. We've got probably about a dozen of people, and so many of you have responded to the offer that they are now booked solid for weeks and weeks and weeks. Thankfully, a bunch of you have risen up and said, we'll also be financial coaches if you want us to. And so very soon, we're working on this. We're going to get you the news. We're going to train you so that we'll have more, so that we can, here's my dream. I don't want to just help people at Grace figure this out. I would love, wouldn't it be amazing if you could say to your next door neighbor or your brother or your father or your child, hey, we've got some peer coaches at Grace that would be willing to help you, financial coaches. Wouldn't it be beautiful to be able to offer that to our community for free? For free? The peer financial coaches are a beautiful thing. The second thing we wanted to offer to you is we know how many of you have not taken your future to heart much, and you do not have a will, and you don't have any kind of estate plan, and don't think you have to have a lot of money to have an estate plan. But what is your future? Have you figured it out? That's why we're offering to you the FPM, Financial Planning Ministries seminars. We have one October 5th coming up, led by a wonderful young man, Michael Fisher. What they do is he'll teach for an hour and a half, and then he'll set up an appointment with you and work through your situation, and when it's all done, for free, you will get a will and you will get your estate plan. For free, for no charge at all. It's a beautiful offering. Here's the good news. We're offering that October 25th. Here's the bad news. We are totally book solid. So I emailed Michael this week. I said, can you do another one? He said, I'm in Indy December 7th. Can we do it December 7th? So we're going to do another one December 7th. For those of you who weren't able to sign up, you really need to take advantage of this. And this is, Grace Church is actually contracted with them to provide this for you at no cost. The third seminar we're offering is one we're designing from scratch from three real experts in this field. Greg James from the National Christian Foundation and Lane Hokema and Brent Dunn, who are wonderful financial counselors themselves, are designing a workshop that we're calling Generous Destiny. There are some of you that just because of where you are in your life and the blessings of God, you actually have more to share than others. We want to show you, these guys want to show you, because they believe this is important to them. They want to show you how you can magnify your generosity, in some cases tenfold and more. They'll help you with some real detailed stuff that really is hard for me to understand, but they'll help us all figure out how to work within the tax laws to be able to maximize your generosity for the kingdom. That's called the Generous Destiny Workshop that's coming up Saturday the 26th of October. And finally, just this past week, something has fallen into our lap, and graciously by Marco Dominguez, who attends here at Grace. He works with Financial First Credit Union, and Marco's kind of like a guru or a shepherd of the entire Latino community of Central Indiana. He has an amazing connection, and he wants to provide for Latinos in Central Indiana financial literacy. So he has been working with the Mexican consulate here in Indianapolis, and the Mexican consulate, under the leadership of Fernando Saya, have contacted us along with Marco Dominguez, and they want to partner with us to provide en Espanol on November 15th a financial literacy workshop for Latinos in Central Indiana. I think it's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. So that's coming up on November 15th. I think I've exhausted every list. All the lists are done. Really, I only have one thing left, and I just want to give us some space. I want to just stop talking for a moment, okay? Because I think maybe there's some things you've heard today or the last 4 weeks that you really need to engage with God. So I'm going to give you a few moments of silence, then I'll pray, then we'll have a song, and then we'll go out and split entrees for lunch. All right? Let's pray.
Thanks for watching, but don't stop there. We want you to find community at Grace Church, and the first step in doing that is going to gracechurch.us/hub. There you'll find other sermons, details about upcoming events, and other important announcements. You'll also find service times and locations for all 3 of our Grace Church campuses. We would love for you to join us. And make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out when we post something new. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.